When we're born to when we die, there's one constant relationship we have along the way, and that's with ourselves.
Well, our thoughts create our reality. So you cannot create the life you want to lead without first having the mindset that aligns with that reality you want to create and what you want to manifest for yourself. Every passing moment is an opportunity to turn it all around.
The opportunity to teach yourself, to learn who you are, to bring in these learnings with the pursuit of trying to be better. Life will be there.
Sooner or later.
It'll catch up and will present an opportunity that bears you to who you are, truly in your essence. Welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast, a platform dedicated to engaging discussions with inspiring individuals aimed at nurturing personal development. I'm Richard Thompson, your host, a father, entrepreneur, world champion Ultraman, and passionate about all things high performance. Our mission is to empower both ourselves and you to unlocking our fullest potential, recognizing that this life is no dress rehearsal. While I may not have all the answers, this show serves as our collective journey to uncover them. Welcome back to another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Today we sit down with a familiar guest, Richard Burrows. This is Buzz's third time on the show with us, and we have so much to learn from this human. In this episode, expect to learn about the different types of personal sabotaging we do to ourselves and how this affects our perception of reality, and what we can do to center ourselves, move forward, and just become better humans. All right, let's get into it. Richard Burrows, officially we've talked a lot, but welcome to the studio. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
You are my performance coach and the key reason why I was so successful or relatively successful in the sport that I did. And I think there's a lot for listeners and general public to know and to extract from your wisdom and your learnings. And today is no different. And I think we're going to speak about the pursuit of a high performance mindset, how we sometimes get in our own way. I find it interesting in the sense that and I've said it before on the show, that when we're born to when we die, there's one constant relationship we have along the way, and that's with ourselves. We go through jobs, we go through friends, family, relationships, come and go, kids grow up, kids get out, whatever the situation is, but there's one constant conversation, one constant relationship that we have, and that's with ourselves.
Wherever you go, you're there.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
But on top of that, the majority of conversation in terms of time that we have each day is with ourselves. You might talk to a lot of people, but by and large, you'll always be talking to yourself more than anyone else. And then on top of that, you add into a natural negative bias to everyone's conscious. And this whole idea of comparison and ego and that negative bias that makes us all struggle to look in the mirror and think highly of ourselves, probably because we've witnessed the whole journey, right? Even your close friend who sees you in real life, it's essentially an Instagram version of your actual existence, because they don't see you. They don't see you in the depths of the darkness. And I guess that's the beautiful nature of a committed relationship, because that person sees you at your worst and still loves you. To some degree, they don't see what's in your mind. They don't see how you talk to yourself. And so you've got this dichotomy of like what the world sees of you, but then how you see yourself. And I've had guests come on the show who ordinarily would be, such powerful people in the public eye. And to admit that, in any facet of their life, or they're dealing with trauma or whatever the situation is, they'd be home and they'd be cowering in the corner, hating themselves, and or really struggling to get through the day, and you wouldn't even notice.
No.
And so it's this conversation that you have inside of your head, and because our actions are almost a direct, or are influenced by our thoughts, then it leads to the idea of, well, if you want high performance outcomes, it comes back to the high performance mindset. And then a huge component must be on how we view ourselves and how we potentially sabotage ourselves. With that, over to you.
Yeah. Well, our thoughts create our reality. So you cannot create the life you want to lead without first having the the mindset that aligns with that reality you want to create and what you want to manifest for yourself. And getting to know yourself, I think, is a huge part of the equation, because unless you do the work, unless you really hold that mirror up to yourself and understand why you behave the way you do, why you make the decisions you make, why you sometimes struggle under pressure, what your natural tendencies are, if you don't understand where they come from, and as we'll perhaps get to, what are your main saboteurs, then you're always going to be limited in what you can achieve. And you're always going to be operating from a position of perhaps seeking safety and avoiding threat and protection, rather than seeking growth and being vulnerable and being open to experience new things.
In my mind, there are two real ways to avoid looking into and understanding yourself. One is an uncontrollable reaction to a situation where, you see you just go off your rocker and you just react really, really abruptly, or
Is this a cornflakes on the kitchen table scenario?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then you lose it at whoever is in your target, and then you just play on and you just get this persona of, well, he's grumpy or he's angry or he's emotional or he's, but it's just a band-aid of what true response is or true feelings are. The other one is just complete indifference to it, or at least trying to avoiding it by all things necessary. And I've talked about this as well. Like, you would get to the red light at the lights, and instead of just sitting with your own thoughts, not even going down the exercise of, well, what are my deficiencies? How can I rectify them? But just sitting with your own thoughts, people don't like that. And so they pull out their phone at the red light, or they're in the line for something, the shops, waiting for the checkout to go through, and they're sitting on their phone because, God help them, they just sit in their own head for a moment. I think it's getting worse, maybe. Like, people will be watching TV and on their phones because one
is not enough.
It's not enough to really.
We need to ramp up the distraction.
Yeah. And I think that if you had the ability, or certainly in my experience, if I could go back in my 20s to be able to go, okay, you really need to learn who you are, what you stand for, get that inner strength, however challenging. Because when you are faced with some serious adversity, that's when your true self will come out, and all the deficiencies there.
It's the patterns that have been ingrained through your upbringing and how you sought safety, how you sought validation, how you sought love. When the pressure's on, when you respond instinctually and instinctually to those stimulus, that's the pattern that's playing out. That becomes hardwired into you.
Why do you think we avoid learning more about ourselves or our deficiencies? Or
it's not taught. School is very good at telling you how to sit tests and to solve academic problems and to learn about knowledge and thinking. It's not very good at teaching you how not to think. I think as we get older and as we develop a bit more self-awareness, that might be really uncomfortable for a lot of people to put the spotlight on themselves. Doesn't make you feel good to say, you know what, I am this type of personality when things go wrong. These are my weaknesses. It's uncomfortable, and it's something you might feel some shame and some just negative emotions attached to the fact that you're not perfect, and that you've got a lot of traits and character traits and behaviors which you might not be very proud of, but they're you. And if you keep avoiding them, turning to the phone or seeking distraction, whether that's in substances or behaviors or relationships, and don't learn who you are, then you'll continue to repeat the pattern.
And I guess that's when people get jolted into action when they're forced to confront it, right?
Mm.
And either the trauma or the situation becomes so bad that they go, okay,
Enough's enough.
I need to,
Yeah.
I'm now at the bottom. I'm now at the basement. I need to now, I've got no other choice but to look inside and work it out.
Mm.
Yeah. And if anything, I'd want to, I think what you do and the work you do is instrumental in the hope that people can do these exercises, learn more about themselves before they get to the basement, so they're ready, because life will come, right? Life will be there
Sooner or later.
It'll
Yep.
catch up and will present an opportunity that bears you to who you are truly in your essence. And if you don't know, or if you're not ready, the rug will be pulled underneath you.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's just reality. And so then for listeners, and for myself, you sort of go, okay, well, whilst I'm not at the basement, look at that as the opportunity to teach yourself, to learn who you are, to bring in these learnings, and with the pursuit of trying to be better. So then talk to me about the role of a saboteur, or how we are getting ourselves in our own way.
Well, first and foremost, nobody's immune. Everyone has their own, and I think we've touched on this, they've got their own unique story that contributes to getting in their own way. But the master saboteur, which everyone possesses, is the judge. And so we're always judging ourselves, we're judging circumstances, and we're judging other people. And it's usually, like you mentioned, through that negative lens, where's the threat? We're always looking out for, a potential threat to the ego or to our safety or whatever it is. So everyone judges, and most of the time unfairly. We're always hard on ourselves. If circumstances present where there's a challenge or some stress, the tendency is to see that negatively and something that needs to be avoided. And seeing sometimes the worst in other people can be a default judgment that we make. What I try and ingrain and convey to people is that growth and transcendence never comes from that contained mindset of judging yourself harshly, of judging circumstances and other people harshly. You have to take a different perspective. You have to, and this is all through the work of Shirzad Shamin's positive intelligence, you have to take a sage perspective, whereby you view every challenge or every problem or every issue as a gift, an opportunity to be a better version of yourself. And if we circle back to where you were in Hawaii a couple of years ago, the circumstance which you were judging super harshly, your own performance, the situation you were in as being just this massive threat to what the goal was and, what your identity was at that time, we had to shift that. We had to say, all right, here's the opportunity. Here is the gift within this situation that we were not hoping for. Here is an opportunity to deliver something special. If we go back to the saboteurs, though, the master being the judge, everyone has their own individual accomplice saboteurs. There's a variety of them, and you might have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's like a bit of everyone has their own individual recipe.
Tapestry of
That's right,
accomplice saboteurs, yeah.
And so for me personally, I'm happy to share that my main accomplice saboteur is the hyper-rational. In my mind, I'm always, and I think this is perhaps a lot to do with my training in my early career in intelligence and human source operations, is it was drilled into us. If you're going to share information, if you're going to report something, within this intelligence community, you got to be pretty sure you know what you know. There were systems of grading the validity of the source and the probability that the information was true. And so we'd always have to code, whether it was an A1 is something that is known to be fact, incontrovertible.
Gravity.
Yeah. Or is it? Right down to a D.
Hearsay.
D4 is like
I heard it on the train.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that hyper-rational mind is, how do you know what you know? What are your assumptions? What are your biases? You got to be aware of that. And so I'd always be seeing that in other people if they were trying to, pass something off as, opinion or fact. I'm going, well, I see your biases. I see how emotions perhaps clouding your judgment. I'm going to call bullshit on this. My default mode is always rational. Tell me, how do you know what you know? Which can be valuable in certain circumstances, but it also completely discounts the validity and the importance of emotion and feeling, which is how other people operate. If they tend
and convey communication.
Exactly, yeah. Particularly in relationships and male to female relationships, that's a huge part of it. So that's one of my blind spots. That's a bias, a saboteur that I need to be aware of, which can trip me up and shut me off from people who might view someone with that particular saboteur as being, cold, calculating. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So someone would say to you, I'm upset about this. And maybe your position is, well, you have no right, like you shouldn't be because of the bias or because of you're not seeing it the way that it actually is.
Yeah. Either that or, okay, here's how we fix it, rather than I don't want to be told how to fix it. I just want you to
be aware
of
that I'm upset.
Exactly. Yeah. And empathize with me and support me. And yeah.
And also for you to know that their feelings of being upset is fact, because who are you to dispute how they feel? Perception
is reality for
irrespective of why. It's the fact that they are upset. That's the issue.
Correct.
Not how you might think 10 different ways why they shouldn't be or why their facts are wrong that's caused them to be upset. But the purpose of the conversation is, I'm upset.
Yeah. I don't care whether this was written on the calendar 2 weeks ago. You should have reminded me about it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but I'm upset. And then I think it comes from a place of going, okay, I acknowledge you're upset. Sorry that you are. Work through that. Yeah. Interesting. So what are the other accomplices? So this is for get my head around it. So this is sort of like the main influencer on the judge, how you judge, how you're getting your own way, how you're sabotaging your own growth or your own life. Okay.
Can I take a stab at what might be?
Well, give me some examples. So we've got an avoider. They focus on the positive and pleasant in an extreme way, avoiding difficult and unpleasant tasks and conflicts.
Yeah. Easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. So if you make those hard choices and don't avoid conflict or a challenge, then you set yourself up for opportunity and growth.
And the avoiding bit is, I find interesting because you're trying to avoid. The Imperfects had a wonderful episode recently. They talked about discomfort over peace. I think, God, someone's going to tell me that was wrong. But this position of people who do avoid, they're trying to keep the peace to avoid the uncomfortable discussion.
But that's where the growth comes.
Yeah, but also by virtue of doing that, at some point it'll catch up. At some point you'll be taken advantage of, or the situation will blow up, or that you've created something you could have nipped in the bud right now in the small amount of moment will be a massive elephant in X amount of time, and which will be ultimately a worse outcome. And that comes back to Jordan Peterson's The Truth bit, where you just speak your truth. And I appreciate the audience the company that I'm in today, given that you're so clinical about the truth. But the truth as you see it, and you to be able to say, "Oh, this is how I see it," and be clinical, almost clinical with that to go.
Or just honest.
Yeah.
And not sugarcoating, not trying to explain, not trying to rationalize. Just that, impartial, sharing. This is how I see things.
And it's awkward, and it's not easy, but by virtue of And this is like work relationships, this is home relationships, this is family, this is work, whatever the situation is. But if you're going to have a strong relationship with someone on any level, you need to create, it's almost like a muscle, right? You need to work at that relationship. And by doing that, you need to test it. And by creating an environment where you continually test it, and it creates an environment, a positive environment, a safe environment to put these things in the air and question them, not to avoid it. And go, hey, I don't like how you stack the shoes, or you can't talk to someone like that, like at work, for example. And it might be difficult. It may be a couple of days where your employee or someone in the office,
there's the tension in the air,
hates you or whatever. Well, not hates you, but there is that tension, the awkwardness. But by virtue of that, you continually work at that, then the relationship gets better, and it provides an environment where you can always just share.
And you become more adept at sitting with discomfort.
Yeah.
You go, okay, I feel awkward about this, but I need to put it out there.
I don't know whether kids do that really well. Like they're unapologetically like, you're shit.
Yeah.
Like, I hate you. Like certainly all the brothers at home, they're just, they're their best mates and worst enemies within a few minutes. And they're happy to tell them the truth as they see it.
Yeah.
But then as we get older, we find that, it's a bit awkward as adults.
Social convention, don't want to be seen to be someone who's difficult to get along with or...
Yeah, right. Controller, anxiety-based need to take charge and control situations and people's actions to one's own will. High anxiety and impatience when that is not possible.
Comes down to a lack of trust in others or circumstances that without personal intervention, something is going to go wrong. And being able to trust and allow others in the world and circumstances to come to you and show up how they need to. And this is something I've been getting better at doing is, particularly with business, is not trying to hold on to things so tightly. The harder you squeeze, the more likely things are to slip through your fingers. The more you take a step back and go, okay, when things are in alignment, when the time is right, the right clients will come. Don't try and force them.
Don't force it.
Yeah.
And I had a dinner a couple months ago with David Dangerfield, who has been on the show early days, as early as you. And
the OGs.
yeah. Keels Mountain.
Keels Mountain basement.
And he had this incredible analogy of a wave, or not a wave, but an up and down. And you need to ride the downs to be able to get momentum to go up, to keep going up. But if you stay at the bottom, and similarly, if you squeeze it and try to force yourself out of a trough, or control, as this accomplished saboteur is, to control the environment because you're unhappy with where you are, you avoid the momentum of it, the natural momentum of going up. And I think that if you force anything in life, the outcome is not great.
No.
You need to let it come. And there is that element of acceptance, which is sometimes hard.
Equanimity.
It'll be what it'll be. The other thing as well that I struggle, and this might be off topic, but like you said at the start, that our perception is our reality. Like the world itself, not connected with our own mind. The world itself is its own thing, and we're just part of it. But how we perceive the world is through the lens that we allow it to be. And so there is an enormous amount of like ownership to how you view life, because it is all just you.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have two people and they have the same experiences. They see the world completely different based solely on their own lens.
Yeah, their own lens, the input, and even what as humans we can perceive in the world and in the universe is just a fraction of the inputs that are actually out there.
Yeah.
If you think about where we see on the visible spectrum, what we can hear compared to other animals, it's so limited.
Mm.
We've just got blinkers on. And yeah, like you said, two people, complete same circumstances, different focal points. You see something as negative or positive based on the way you perceive it.
And a friend of mine who runs a successful professional services firm, has probably 30 staff. He had this sort of team bonding thing every month. And there was two staff members who one was, she was very positive and a really good worker and a great team player. And the other one was always, rather negative and certainly a victim of life. And they were both being very vulnerable. And the one that was really positive was vulnerable enough to share what she's been going through at home over the last number of years. I think she had lost a relative or a close relative, anyway, really like a lot of things.
Mhm.
And the other one hadn't had anything close to that. And now I'm not suggesting that trauma or experiences are comparable, but it was an interesting anecdote from him because it was like, we really like you can give yourself permission to be the victim or to think negative of the world or whatever thing you've been dealt with in as negative light as you'd like it to be. And that's to your own peril. And you can find that's why you find it interesting with people who have objectively gone through a lot. And there's some really famous, Nelson Mandela, really high level of trauma and prosper on the other side. And they're not superhuman.
No.
It's just the lens and the way that they deal with their things. And who am I to complain to you about the fact that I had a bad day one in Hawaii? It's just sport. But it was all encompassing and it was all, oh man, this is the worst. And
to you, that was your entire
right.
world
They're
in
in
that
that moment for sure. And there was a lot on it and you were able to shift that mindset. So to not try to control, not try to control it and squeeze it and try to force it. It was to let go a little bit and to see the opportunity. And that's when you can see the opportunity, right? The next one, hyperachiever, dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation. Latest achievement quickly discounted, needing more.
Sound familiar?
I think we should go to the next. We should definitely go to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's one which is so common. People and especially people who come into my orbit who are successful in business or in sport, driven. We might refer to them as the A-type personality. Achievement, go-getters. But when you are always in that mode, fulfillment and, why we're here, success, happiness, it's always a shifting goalpost. The can's always getting kicked further up the road. And, a lot of times people don't allow themselves to be or to experience contentment and joy in what they have accomplished. It's right, next thing. I've got to, if I'm not pushing, if I'm not setting out after the next goal, then I'm deficient. I'm not living up to my potential. What if your potential is just to enjoy the moment?
Yeah.
Share it with those who matter most.
There is definitely two competing ideas that I struggle with where you're going, well, I am content with the moment, but I'm also so driven for so much more. And so then you go, well, how can I calibrate both of those ideas?
It's a dance, something that you've got to play with. And as we'll probably get to, always try and shift yourself into the sage perspective. And
can you give me some more of that?
If all of the negative saboteur mindset emotions are limiting growth and performance, the sage perspective, which treats everything as a gift, an opportunity, provides you with clear ways to self-actualize in that regard. So drawing more on traits like empathy, which we've talked a little bit about in relationships, or exploration. So exploring possibilities, playing the game of what if and then what, rather than limiting your view to a narrow lens. It might be navigating through difficult decisions or circumstances, or it might be activating into, don't want to say an achievement mode, but being proactive in being your best self. So rather than being defensive and being protective, it's more about exploring and showing empathy and all those kind of positive traits, which you can replace the negative with the positive. So yeah, it is, and I get there's always a tension between the saboteur behaviors, because that has propelled a lot of people to really great things.
Yeah.
But don't expect it to, if we're talking about the long game and fulfillment and self-actualization, don't expect that to be the ultimate answer, is just more, achieving more, even though it's driving you.
I think personally, I think it's a understanding that I am my happiest. There's a lot of factors that create that, but I'm most fulfilled when I'm doing something that's massive, that's got purpose. It's not trying to achieve the end goal that creates the happiness. It's the path to that. It's a sacrifice.
It's a vehicle for something else.
Yeah, and that's where I'm most fulfilled. I'm trying to get to a place where I can very much enjoy the moment, knowing that I am on that journey, not dissatisfied because I'm not at the destination yet, but just the fact, by virtue of the fact that I'm on the path of improvement or high performance or putting together a goal. The goal is never the end. The end point is never the goal. The goal is actually the journey towards it. So to be able to say, for me, I know that my lowest, conversely, my lowest moments in life have been when I've been perilous or not knowing what direction to go. When you've got a direction, you've got a massive goal. Make it big, make it massive, make it bigger than you think is possible. You want to sell 10 widgets, sell 1 million, figure that out and go backwards from there. But you, by virtue of being on that path, that gives the fulfillment.
It's spiritual energy.
Yeah.
I mean, energy, what we should all be concerned with. I think we touched on, perhaps before we started rolling, that time being such a finite and constraining variable. Forget about time. If your focus is on energy and how to maximize your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy, and spiritual energy coming back to your purpose and your why for doing, which is hopefully aligned with your values and all that, you'll have a deep well of energy to draw from, and it will sustain your ups and downs, because there will be the peaks and troughs. But if you've got a clear vision and a clear understanding of why you're doing something, then just like you said, being on that path is the most important thing.
Is that an exercise that we should all be doing in terms of stock take of the time that we're spending?
I think so. It's a bit of a mug's game trying to manage time. If you haven't first established, clearly, your priorities in terms of personal why and values and mission, you can be an expert in time management and be highly efficient, but are you being effective in pushing towards where you want to get to? Time is the most valuable resource we have. Anything that steals your time is something you need to really look hard at in your life.
And how would you go about, and this is a bit off topic, but if you're looking for direction or you do this exercise, and I suspect people struggle with the exercise of looking inside and working out, is this the path of where that I'm wanting to go in all those areas? If you didn't know where you're wanting to go, or whether this is the right path for you, how do you sit down with yourself and work out what is?
I think it's just what sparks your curiosity. What do you want to learn? What do you want to find out? And work backward from there. And you don't have to solve it tomorrow or next year or even 5 years from now. But if you're doing something which is leading and pulling you rather than, having to push. I think that pull factor is so much more important than
forcing it.
All right, I got to get up and I got to do this because, X, Y, and Z. No, I'm really curious, and what you're doing now with business. Waking up and going, oh, this is a fun problem to solve, even though the day to day can be a grind, or it can be, we have the unpleasant moments and our struggles, but through that process, you're, satisfying that curiosity. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I love that. All right, the next one. Hyper-rationale, intense and exclusive focus on the rational processing of everything, including relationships.
Guilty.
That's what we talked about.
Yeah.
Yep. Can be perceived as uncaring, unfeeling, or intellectually arrogant.
You wouldn't say that, would you?
Sums up you. The next one, hypervigilant. Continuous intense anxiety about all the dangers and what could go wrong. Vigilance that can never rest.
I think we've probably touched on that.
Yeah, one of my boys would be already showing signs of that continually on the look of dangers and what could go wrong, rather than just letting it be.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm dealing with that at home,
and I think that's probably becoming more common in the modern world. The way we're, just because of the vast amounts of information which are available to the kids as they're growing up, and the perception that danger lies everywhere. The world is not safe. No doubt that's becoming an issue for kids, teens, adolescents, young adults.
On an evolution basis, there's a reason to be vigilant, right? With our DNA's there, so in the case the lion rocks up and we have to make sure that we're okay. But there is that, I can see how, particularly at home, like that could get in the way of people's growth or potential when any move is fraught with danger.
You never take any risks.
Yeah. Everyone's got their own risk tolerance, and a lot of that is education, I think, by the way. I think, I'm not sure really, but, and obviously I'm viewing it firsthand at home with my boy, but I almost feel like people's risk tolerance are much closer than what I think is perceived, but people operate with a different level of understanding or education about any particular scenario. And people will go, oh man, that was really risky. And it's like, well, if you knew everything that I knew, you wouldn't see it as risky. Or, like you wouldn't, people don't want to jump out of an airplane, but people who do understand the variables and understand the risks. It's not zero, the risk of jumping out of an airplane and dying. It's not 0%. But someone who's risk adverse to that experience probably thinks it's much higher than what the person doing it is with all the information.
Correct.
And so the question would be, is that person staying on the ground because it's zero, because it's not zero in any event, or is the person with all that knowledge more likely to do it based on the fact that they know what the person who does jump know?
Yeah, just that analogy of jumping out of planes. I'm very close and train often with someone who is a base jumper.
Yeah, right.
And not just base jumping, but wingsuit base jumping.
Yeah.
So there's, in his world, I think at any given moment, there's probably around about, between 200 and 400 people in the world doing that sport.
Right.
That's a really small community. And a lot of people get into that sport for perhaps the thrill seeking and the escapism of it. And you obviously don't last in that sport unless you develop a really good understanding of yourself and of your craft, and knowing how to manage emotions and knowing how to manage stress and anxiety and uncertainty. Because you want to be pretty certain before you go, flying whatever it is, 5-10 meters from a cliff face.
Yep.
That you've got real confidence in not only your ability but the conditions and the circumstances. So yeah, if you're not being honest with yourself and avoiding any hard and fast truths, you'll pay the price. So.
That's interesting. Next one, pleaser indirectly tries to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, rescuing, or flattering others, loses sight of own needs and becomes resentful as a result.
I think we all probably know people like that who just want to keep the peace, just want to make everyone happy.
Yeah.
Whether it's a relative or someone in business, colleagues or people we know. If you're always relegating your own interests and your own needs,
you become almost codependent on that relationship, whatever it is that you're helping to please, because that's essentially then becomes the source of your
identity and your fulfillment is
your fulfillment is tied up with somebody else.
Yeah.
And so then you just continually go down that path. And referencing to Peterson again about that, he sort of says that a rabbit is not virtuous. Just trying to keep the peace, and just because you don't have a dragon inside of you doesn't make you a good person. A good person is someone who has the dragon inside them, has a sword, but knows how to use it and knows how to tame the dragon. And so I guess it's a little bit of a way from being a pleaser, but in the same way of going, well, I'll just make someone else happy to keep the peace, to fill up my own cup at the expense of that. And the reality is, it would appear that you would either you get taken advantage of, or the dragon gets let out and you don't have the ability to control it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not great either. Restless. A restless is constantly in search for greater excitement in the next activity or constant busyness, rarely at peace or content with the current activity.
The millennials.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a couple in the office, and yeah, I can attest to that. But
yeah, what's the next distraction? What's the next high? Yeah,
what dopamine hit.
Yeah, dopamine. Yeah, we're all chasing that feel-good chemical. Yeah. That's driving so much behavior.
Next one, a stickler, perfectionism, and a need for order and organization taken too far, anxious, trying to make too many things perfect.
And in my own assessment, this was probably number 2 on my saboteur list.
Yeah, right.
I think it's a little bit similar to the controller, just having to have that order. And there's a real difference between right and wrong. If you're not right, you're wrong. And not really recognizing that, like we said, everyone's perception is different and there's shades of grey. And so, who am I to judge you for not meeting up to what I think is the letter of the law?
Yeah, sure.
And the issues that causes.
Recently, Roger Federer did a speech at the university somewhere in America. Do you see that?
Oh, I didn't watch it, but I saw he'd given a graduation speech.
Yeah, and his position was perfection doesn't exist. And out of all of the matches, he won something like, and again, this hasn't been fact checked. But I think he won 80 something matches percent. Yep. And obviously, world number one, well, one of the greatest. And he said, guess what percentage of points that I won? And it was like 54%. So 46% or some significantly high number.
He's losing.
He lost those points. And so that was a wonderful example of that you just can't be perfect. And the pursuit of that is a fool's game. You can search for high performance and try to be better, like we talk about at work, try to be that 1% better every day. And being honest with yourself as to how you can be better. But perfection is not somewhere to be.
And that's, the judge at play. It's like, I'm not perfect, therefore, I'm not worthy.
Yeah. And finally, a victim, emotional and temperamental as a way to gain attention or affection. An extreme focus on internal feelings, particularly painful ones, has a martyr streak. This is a tough one I've found where people in my sphere of influence, if they suffer from it, the victim mentality, it's hard to tolerate, and it's also hard to get them out of that.
And that just perpetuates their perception, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah. It's like, oh,
He doesn't like
He doesn't
me
care.
anymore.
He doesn't care.
And that's
Yeah.
because of this. Yeah, it's absolutely.
Spiral.
Yeah,
Hey?
yeah, yeah. And I guess to your point about all of this is that these sort of saboteurs, or the accomplice to the judge of internal dialogue and the internal view of who we are and how we see ourselves, they were all initially set up as a child or in early years to protect us, right? They're there they were there ingrained. And so what do you think, what's been in your history or your experience with the work that you do and the coaching that you do with people to get out of that? Because if it's something so subconsciously built into our DNA in our existence, obviously people come to you wanting to change. And I guess that's the first hurdle. You can't force anyone. They've got to actively want to be better. But what's the first step?
It gets back to what I perhaps mentioned to you in 2022. Yeah, that all resides in here. Those all stories that we are repeating and running in our head. We get out of our head and into our body, get back into feeling, back into the present moment. And by doing that, I think you can interrupt the pattern and at least buy yourself time to go, okay, this is the story running. Okay, this is my hyper-rational. I see what you're trying to do here and I understand where it's coming from, but I've got a different option here. So all of the training that I do is about inserting that wedge in between stimulus and response. And whether it's in the ice or whether it's underwater, in the intense heat of a sauna, yeah, these are all opportunities to practice running up against that story. Yeah, okay. I can focus on my breath. I can focus on sense of touch. I can focus on something which brings me into the present moment.
And away from those stories.
Yeah. And the more you strengthen that muscle, the more you develop that ability to separate yourself in the moment from story, you create an opportunity to make a better decision and be better.
So first step would be to identify
Yeah.
those accomplice saboteurs.
Know thyself.
Yeah, know thyself.
Yeah.
And take some time to really understand where you're, I guess, deficient.
And just reflect on them and start to, it's like when you identify something, you start to see it everywhere. That old adage of, you're looking at a particular car.
Red car.
You start seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
So if you go through that exercise of identifying, okay, which ones in that list really apply to me, and you put that at the forefront of your mind as you go about your day, whether it's work or relationships at home or just even in the moments with yourself, you'll start to notice it rearing its head. And you go, okay,
there it is again.
I see you. Let's just pause. And rather than the instinctive behavior or the pattern that plays out, how we would usually respond, let's just spend 30 seconds or a minute slow controlled breathing and just meditate on this. Do I really need to respond in that way? Probably not. What's a better option?
And just to have that motivation to have a bit of time between the stimulus and the response, to acknowledge that you've been, for lack of a better word, triggered.
Yeah.
To go back to this old behavior of the accomplice saboteurs, which are, I guess, prohibiting your growth and prohibiting your path towards purpose and fulfillment, and then say, okay, that's not me. I want to be able to be better. So this is, as you say, do I need to respond? Or how do I respond better and not just react the way that I've reacted for X amount of years?
Yep.
Love it.
Every passing moment is an opportunity to turn it all around. I think that was in Vanilla Sky. I remember that movie with Tom Cruise. And Penelope Cruz.
Yeah.
Every passing moment you get an opportunity to make a better decision and
Yeah.
to write the path you want to write.
Which is what makes life so exciting. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
every single moment we have now is an opportunity.
Mm.
And to see it that way and just to take on that onslaught of opportunity is incredibly inspiring and fulfilling.
Exciting.
Buzz, this has been great. Before you go, I'm going to throw you back some questions
Ooh.
we asked you. This might be a little bit different, but we'll go.
Cody mentioned you've got a new regime.
A little bit. This is similar. What does success mean to you now?
Yeah, living in accordance with the values of curiosity and service. I think that probably hasn't changed. And yeah, savoring each day on that path. That's to me.
What's your view on happiness? Or what makes you happy?
Deciding to be happy and deciding to see the positive in every situation. I think it is completely up to us.
Mm.
Yeah.
We may as well pay homage to the book this whole episode's about.
Yeah.
The next question was, what book would you give or tell someone to read?
I mean, yeah, obviously Positive Intelligence is a really great way to explore everything we've discussed today. But if I could throw another book, really, really enjoyed Rick Rubin's The Creative Act.
Okay.
So for those who don't know Rick Rubin, music producer, worked with everything from Metallica to Adele, and has a very beautiful way of describing the process of being an artist. And I think the underlying point is we are all artists. We are all creating our own masterpiece in the world. So we shouldn't think differently to the way that Picasso or Eddie Vedder thinks about the creative act. It's
nice.
We're all painting our own masterpiece.
So good.
Super easy read too. You'll plow through it. And probably one that I'll go back to again and again.
Yeah, okay. 4 guests who you'd invite to dinner, dead or alive, but not friends or family. Who would you invite?
So they're all alive.
They could be all alive or they could be dead.
Okay.
Not mutually exclusive. Just anybody you'd like to invite in the history of the world. 4 people.
Bruce Springsteen.
Yep.
Because we'd have a jam after dinner.
Yeah,
for sure.
I like that.
That'd be awesome. Dr. Jack Kruse. He is someone who's really influencing my thinking a lot at the moment. Neurosurgeon, quantum biology wizard, and has really caused me to reevaluate a lot of my opinions and behaviors and approaches to health, fitness, training, life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's something he often says is, the mark of an educated mind is the ability to take something you believe to be fundamentally true and examine it and question it, test it. Yeah. I'm going to go with Kathy Freeman, someone who's experienced the pinnacle of pressure. And I think along with Kieran Perkins's 1500 in 96, Kathy Freeman's 400 in 2000 are just 2 of the most special sporting moments I've ever obviously watched on TV. And just to explore what that was like, I think it'd be fascinating. And finally, number 4, Bourdain.
Okay.
Yeah. Anthony Bourdain. Just someone who I think, obviously sucked the marrow out of life and culture and travel and people and connecting with people and sharing stories and experiences. There's that beautiful little quote he had about, talking to the locals in a bar on a 5 p.m. on a weekday, having a beer, having a Negroni, eating an oyster, tipping the wait staff. I'm probably butchering all of the elements of it, but just a real...
Loved it.
Lesson for how to suck the most out of life.
So good. And then final question, which I'm hoping you answer, is the base jumper, but someone who you think we should have on the show next.
Yeah, sure. Timmy.
All right.
Timmy Node, local guy.
Yeah.
Lives up in my neighbourhood in Noosa.
Yeah.
Base jumper, breathwork facilitator.
Perfect.
All-round legend.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Sort it out. Buzz, this has been great. Really appreciate it. Third time round.
My pleasure.
There's a reason why it's been 3 and no one else. But yeah, You're amazing. And I can't wait to have you on again.
Thanks for having me, mate. Great to see you.
Cheers. That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Next time you're doing breathing exercises, turn to the person next to you and tell them all about the show. It means a lot. Until next time, peace.